These are the woods that the cabin is in. My cabin is about a tenth of a mile that way, and I think about just how alive I feel when I'm here in the woods. Like, you got the sun, you've got all this greenery. It's a beautiful stone wall right there. It was put down hundreds of years ago. And for me, being outside is where I feel the most alive. And I wish that I could take that feeling into civilization, like when I go down to Northampton or to Amherst or Greenfield, anywhere where there's other people. And I find that when I try to talk candidly with about just nature in the woods, I feel like either I'm not conveying just how wonderful it is here, or most people have never experienced an environment like this. And like in Michael Moore's film Planet of the Humans, he talks about how if we had to get by on the sunlight that came in this year, we would deplete the entirety of our wild forests in the United States just to make electricity, run the automobile fleet. You can't run a car on wood, but just for heating, just to heat what we have in the winter. And I think that speaks to just how grossly overbuilt our architecture is today. Now, you could heat that small cabin over there during the winter for a modest amount, probably just off what naturally falls down every year. It'd be good enough. But you're not going to heat McMansions and giant houses and grocery stores. You're not going to heat them with wood. There just isn't enough of it. And there's always enough nature. I think there is. If we leave it alone. But if we start making demands of it that it conform to what we want, then it's not enough and will never be enough. And that's like an abuser in a relationship, demanding the other person change to suit their needs. Not even needs, like wants. Because I look around the forest here, and it has everything somebody could want. Not want, need. Like, you got sticks for kindling, there's stones and enough wood for building. But when you build, you can't build a castle to yourself. You build a shelter for yourself. And a small shelter should be all that you need. And my cabin, it's pretty small. It's got 100 square feet. It's basically a small shed in terms of size. But that should be enough. And okay, maybe I could put a small lean-to off the back and make it a bit bigger, but it's that order of magnitude is what you need. And I look at dating and courtship today, and it's overly complicated. And the only thing I really ask, like when I go out, is that the other person take care of themselves and that they respect themselves. And that's the big problem I have with the fat acceptance movement, is that if you're okay with yourself being fat, then you're not respecting yourself. And I think self-respect is the beginning of having respect for nature. At least I see the two as being somewhat intertwined. And denying nature is what technology has become about. Whereas if technology was about accepting nature and working with nature, then I think that's how humanity will survive long term. And agriculture is the oldest form of technology. So, has that ever really been sustainable? And there are forms of it that seem to work. Like you look at how the Native Americans lived here in North America with the pumpkins, maize, and squash, and beans, and that. And they didn't deplete their topsoil. And you look at Africa, and agriculture there is what created the Sahara Desert. And going back to Henry David Thoreau again, he talked about how if you put 4 hours into your garden every day, you could live off it. Now, did Thoreau live off his garden at Walden Pond? I have my doubts about that, but he is right that 4 hours a day is what it takes to maintain a garden. Okay, let's say if you want to do it sustainably through horticulture and that, let's add another hour onto that. So 5 hours a day. 5 hour workday. That's that's pretty good. You're not going to have a lot of stress in your life if you're working 5 hours. And now there are other chores that need to be done too. Like you'd have to mend your clothes, you cook the food. And this is where a family unit comes in. And I think the destruction of the nuclear family is just this culture's latest attempt to make us dependent on it. Because, like, the first thing empires do is they plow down the indigenous people, they take away access to the land, because having access to places like this is how you get self sufficiency. And that is what the American dream is really based off of. It's being self made, independent, and you have to have land to do that. And you don't need complicated tools to build a cabin. You need a saw, a hatchet, a hammer, and some way to make joints. A hand planer would be good. Maybe a couple nails. But we've really overcomplicated everything today. And I think looking back for simplicity, or like, history is full of old technologies that worked. And we dismiss them out of hand as being old fashioned, but maybe some of those old fashioned things are what is sustainable. And maybe we could put them together in new combinations that we never thought of before. And that would make a better world. A world where we still have forests, a world where we we still have wild birds, and people can sit in places like this and just marvel at what's here, what we have.